I know I'm not normally behind the camera these days, but I am changing up the format temporarily. This is not going to be a permanent thing, but I'm temporarily changing up the format because I basically need to go through a lot of figures between now and the end of the year because I'm way behind on what I want to cover for my top 10 list at the end of the year. I mean, this is obviously subject to change, but there are a lot of things that I want to cover that I want to make sure in that top 10 list, and I'm just so far behind because I've been taking things so slowly. The other formats, they take a lot more time, so I'm just doing behind the camera stuff for now so I can play catch up, and I really just want to knock out a bunch of videos because I like talking about toys, I just hate video editing. Also, I should warn you all, I have not recorded in several weeks because Astrid scratched the ever-loving crap out of this hand, at the other side of the hand. What's left is a scar, so just warning y'all now, you'll see a line on my wrist. That is from Astrid. I'm fine, she is fine, but yeah, she got me right there, and that is the scar that she left. There's actually a lot more damage that she did to my hand, to the point where I was like, I'm not going to record right now because my hand looks so terrible it's going to gross people out. So yeah, this is as good as it gets. With all that out of the way, let's take a look at Monocrat Mega Tank. And oh boy, I did not angle the camera right for this, but while we're here, let me just say, this thing is dense and heavy and awesome, and also it rolls shockingly well. Like, let me put this back down here so you can kind of see how, with just a little bit of a nudge, like, yeah, that rolls really well. So, getting back to the tank in hand, Monocrat's Mega Tank, I'm just going to call him Mega Tank at this point, is so freaking cool. This figure, I wanted to cover this figure first because this is obviously going to be in my top 10 at the end of the year. I don't know where exactly, but this is going to be in the top 10. I can guarantee you that. There's nothing that I've gotten my hands on since this, and I'm sure there's nothing I'm going to get my hands on after this that will nudge this out of the top 10 spot. So this is definitely a top 10 figure for me for this year, and I'm very glad I got it. Definitely not cheap, though. I got it from a Big Bad Toy Store before they brought the price up another 20 bucks or so, so given what you have here, it's a great price. And this thing is very heavy, very dense. I did not think this through with regards to any of this, but yeah, this is a very, very cool tank. It's got its problems, but overall very cool. On the underside, it is surprisingly not that bad. The only really unfortunate thing is you've got Megatron's head right in there, very obviously just right there, and that stinks. But as I've said with other similar kind of Bumblebee-style movie figures, it's sort of a Cybertronian mode, so who cares if you can see the robot head? This is not a disguise. I mean, look at this. Even if this was on Earth, this is not a disguise. Nobody's fooling anybody with this. And yes, I probably should have mentioned this before, but Mega Tank is, from what I understand, basically a very large and heavy, why am I holding this with one hand, figure that is designed after some, I think it was concept art of Megatron that they didn't end up using in the Bumblebee movie, but they might end up using in the next one. I don't know if they are or not, but yeah, it's based on concept art, and he's just this dense brick of a tank. There's this wonderful finish on everything that gives it this kind of semi-damaged but kind of like a brushed metal look. There's definitely some die-cast in here somewhere given the heft of this thing, but I'm not entirely sure where. I think towards the legs, but yeah, this thing is just glorious in hand. And this thing is super cool. There is also a button right here that when you press it, the cannon barrel lights up, and that is very neat. I think that's about all I can say. It's just, there's so much detailing on this thing. They painted all of it. Either it's in this like brushed color, or they did like some copper details here, and then there's some other details that we'll see when we get to the robot mode. But yeah, I absolutely adore this thing, and it's gigantic. And let me show you what I mean when I say gigantic, because seriously, this thing is massive. I mean, starting off with the basics, you can see that this thing is just enormous. The tank mode is almost as tall as a deluxe. It probably is as tall as a deluxe, because Spinister is a tall deluxe. So yeah, this thing is pretty large. Actually, let me change the angle on this. There, I feel like that can give you a slightly better idea of just how massive this thing is. It is huge. And even next to what could be considered a contemporary, we've got Voyager class Netflix Megatron with Reaper labels. That is a very good Reaper label set, but it's huge. It's absolutely enormous, and I probably need to stop repeating that over and over again, but I'm just blown away by how huge this thing is. I would also like to state for the record that Netflix Megatron with Reaper labels absolutely freaking rules. But anyway, here's the teeny tiny duck tank. Okay, Megatank's transformation is not as hard as you might think. It's actually a pretty easy and intuitive transformation, but it does require some nuance, and also because of the size and weight of this thing, it can be a little difficult to pull off. So let's get started, and I'm actually going to just walk through it, because to heck with it, right? So I'm going to move this out of the way and pop this off, and this can be a little tricky because the peg just holds in really well, but just keep tugging, and there we go. It's this square peg that goes into there. So with this, and fold that away, and then fold this, oh that's terrible, fold that around, rotate this whole section around like this, and then this thing rotates around like that, and we can get this little peg out. And I'm just going to use a spudger for that because I don't feel like trying to struggle to get it with my nails. So there we go. There is the cannon, the primary cannon barrel, all ready to go. And now for the tank body itself. First off, I want to disconnect the legs. They peg in up here into what are the arms. So you want to give that a tug and give this a tug. There we go. And now rotate this around. It can go either way. I'm going to do it this way. So rotate that around, and now this flap here, it kind of pulls out. It'll pull out and then flips up and then rotates. So you want to pull down, and you can kind of see how it makes this little gap here. So you can flip that up, rotate this around, and that comes back down. But actually, I'm going to leave that off just a little bit because we need some room up here. Now, going to... this tread does unclip from this section, but it's actually easier to unclip it by pulling the rest of this tread section up. So move what will be the toe out of the way, and then pull this up, and this will disconnect, and you'll see this gets nudged forward a bit. Then you can lift it up because there is a little, there's this little peg clip thing here that slides into this gap here, and it's much easier to slide it back and lift it up rather than try and clip it down. I feel like that could be a problem if you do it that way. So with that done now, this can go back, rotate around, and push down. When it's properly lined up, push in, and that secures nicely. And now this lifts up. This section will fold back, and this folds in. And there we go. And now rotate this around 180 degrees. These little bits here rotate up, and there's actually, as we rotate this, you can kind of see, as this comes up, it'll peg in here and complete this little kind of cylinder detail. So that's how you know you've got it lined up right. So do that, make sure this is lined up properly, and now this is a little bit nuanced. You want to pull this up, like you see how it kind of slides in and slides out. You want to pull that back as far as you can and bring this down, and these treads will go into the leg, but doing it right, like if you bring it down, it might get stuck, so you kind of want to push it back just because there's a double hinge there. Just make sure that the treads are back a little bit, bend it down, and it should just kind of settle right in there. And once that's in place and you got all that lined up, you push this down, and that will finish off that section of the leg. and now the leg is one solid piece again. These bits here will flip up, and it's on a spring, so it'll snap into place in here. This bit is on a spring, so by rotating this up, it'll snap to settle into place. And with that settled into place, just push this in, and it'll click into place, and that fixes up that side of the leg. This side of the leg, same thing, except it's swung in the opposite direction, so just swing it down, that locks in, and push this in, and you can kind of see that there's a little spot where this just kind of settles into place. I'm going to rotate here at the knee, or just above the knee, flip out the foot, and bend the knee, flip this section out, and flip this little section out. Very, very important. Do not forget to do this, because that will affect how he stands in robot mode. I will talk more about that when we finish robot mode. That's one leg done. Leg number 2, same deal. Okay, 2 legs done. Now we can work on the pelvis. So I just want to disconnect a bunch of stuff in here. First thing is going to be to unclip this thing. This bit here is on a hinge right up around here, so you want to pull this back to unclip it from this section. So that tug. Come on. Come on. There we go. Whew, that was in there. Anyway, yeah, that comes up. Now we can pull this up a bit. The reason we're doing this is because this section here sits over pegs on these darker gray bits here. So by pulling this up, it lifts this section up a little bit and gives you a little bit more room to work, because you want to unpeg this from here. So unpeg that on either side, and that frees this up. Let me clarify, this is not a difficult transformation. It's really intuitive and smart. It's just this guy is very big and heavy, so doing this in front of a camera is a bit of a challenge. So we're going to bend this in about like that, just to get this area free, because that gives us more room to do this. So we flip this up and out of the way, flip this up, this little section up and out of the way, and now these bits here will hinge down and come together in the center and form what will obviously be the hip pelvis section. Also, there's this joint here that pulls down for articulation. It can help to pull that down just to give you a little bit more room up here to work. So pull that down and push that in, line that back up. And now this section here that was hinged up will come down and peg over these little tabs here, and that will help to lock the pelvis in place. Why did I decide to do this? I'll talk through the whole thing because this is exhausting. Now, I want to get the back part of the pelvis, or the butt. So move these bits out of the way just to clear up some space here. And this section, you can see the double hinge here. This section here will pull out. And that will pull out, and this will sit in this cavity here, and this tab here pegs in there. So once that's pulled out, that'll peg in and solidify the pelvis, and then this comes up and finishes forming the butt. And these can go back here for now. Now we're going to work on the arms, so just straighten that out so that we can move this section here. This will open up. There you can see the fists. These will come up a little ways just to give a little more space to work with. And then they will pull apart right here because they are pegged together. And then swing around. Alright, so with all of this done, I'm just going to finish the arms, I guess. So this section here flips out. You want to be sure to flip that out. Then you can finish straightening out the arm, and it will clip into place and finish forming up the arm. And there's a little spring-loaded flap here that will cover up that gap. So pull it out and lock that into place. And now the entire arm will swing around 180 degrees right here. So I want to swivel that down and around. There we go. And now that arm is just about done. Now with the arms, when you are folding them in for tank mode, when these fold in, they do actually kind of peg or clip into place at about a 90-degree angle. So you do have to unpeg them in order to get them to open up. So I'm going to flip that out, pull it out. This one's a lot more stiff than the other one. Open it up, and you can kind of see that door spring into place. And lock that in. And I'll show you from this angle. Rotate this around. And there we go. Now, this whole thing here will flip down and rotate 180 degrees. There's a lot of rotating on this thing. So that rotates. Now this comes down right here. Don't need to bring it down all the way, but we do need to bring it down enough to kind of straighten things out and keep stuff on camera. Now these will swing in, and just bring the arms out, rotate them into their proper orientation. This just gives me a little more room to work with. So rotate those out, make sure those are set up right. This bit, which was out for tank mode, now tucks inside here. So this flat gray bit just folds up and into place there. This, oh boy, tough to keep all this on camera. This bit folds in and slides down to end up filling in the torso. So this will all come down, and you don't really want to peg it in just yet, because as you bring this up, this will, like these bits here, will peg into the underside here, and you kind of want to come up and around. It's tricky to do, but it is doable. And I'll finish the straightening that out so that you can kind of get a better view here. So that ready, bring this down. Okay, why are we not lining up? There we go. There we go. So all that is now pressed in place. Want to make sure to push here to get that locked into place. So there is the midsection for the finishing up the shoulders. These bits, this thing is so tall. These bits move up, and you want to be sure these are pulled back on this hinge, this kind of double hinge, as far as they'll go. So you can rotate it around, and you'll see that this lines up with this gap here, and that allows you to bring this down and fill out the shoulder. And when you're going into tank mode, you want to be absolutely sure when you bring this up that it is up as far as it'll go, because if it's not, then you won't be able to rotate it. If you try and force it, you'll break something. So make sure that's up all the way, then rotate it. So there we go. And with this one, rotate it around, line up, bring it down. There we go. And lastly, we can work on the backpack. The backpack, compared to everything else, is super simple. So you want to fold this in the rest of the way so that it kind of accordions up like this. And now there is a slider mechanism in here that clicks into place. So you want to push kind of up at this angle to bring this in slightly closer and up. So push to unclick it. There we go, and then click it in place. There we go. And make sure it clicks. And then you can push this in to get that all nice and straight. And there is a peg on the other side that'll peg into the backpack to keep it from rotating. And finally, this thing rotates around 180 degrees, folds down, and the rest of this will fold up. And there is a, you can see there is a slot right there that this will settle into. So you want to line those up, tab it in, and that gives him his telltale over-the-shoulder gun barrel thing. Oh boy, I have worked up such a sweat. Lastly, plug this into the arm, and it is keyed. You can see there is a little kind of tab. It's not just a perfect circle. And so on either arm, you can see how it kind of matches up. Obviously, it's got to go on this arm, but you can plug it into this arm if you wanted to. But you just plug that in, and it plugs in. It's just friction. It doesn't like click into place. And at long last, there we have Mega Tank. I have to push this way back. There we have Mega Tank in his robot mode. And this thing is incredible. It's just heavy and awkward to transform in front of a camera. Oh boy. Alright, give me a second to clean this up. Okay, after a quick figure and lighting adjustment, let's take a bit more of a look at the absolute majesty and grandeur that is Mega Tank, because my goodness. This is very much Megatron. The colors are fantastic. It's kind of like a silvery, metally color all over the place, but like slightly different shades in a few places. So like the shins and the pelvis and the hands are a much darker shade than what's going on around it, so it still evokes a similar color pattern to G1 Megatron. Same for the red and, in this case, bronze colors that they've got going on in the midsection. I love how this evokes G1 Megatron, even though it is very clearly not. This thing is, again, just enormous, but cleans up incredibly well. Like, he's got a backpack, but this is barely anything, I would say. Like, it barely even adds any mass to the back. And I feel like this is kind of required, so I wouldn't even call this kibble. Like, you need to have the cannon barrel thing sticking over Megatron's shoulder, right? There are screw hole covers that come with this figure. I don't know if they cover all of the screw holes that you can see kind of back here and stuff, but I did not put them in because currently I just can't really be bothered, and this thing looks so amazing, I feel like it doesn't really need them. But it does come with them. But yeah, let's just take a quick look at some of the details on this thing. Like, it looks amazing. The tank treads, like, it hides the tank treads entirely. They're tucked into the legs now and hidden by the calf armor, so like, you wouldn't even necessarily know that this thing transforms by looking at it. Much less that it transforms into a tank. I mean, it's a Megatron, so of course it transforms into a tank, but still, this is incredible. Like, there's all this really nice detail and arms, and the pelvis and the midsection. I love the venting here. And of course, the spot for Decepticon logo that I haven't put on there yet. For some reason, I really like the shoulder design, this kind of weird pylon look with the armor plating, which can get out of the way for articulation, which is cool. Now, for the head, because this guy is so tall, I'm just going to take the head off. So, pop that off. It is just on a ball joint, so it just pops on there. So let's put that off to the side so that we can look at the head proper. And I have the regular head on, that's just kind of got the blank expression. There is, I don't know if it's smiling or scowling, but there is an alternate head, entire head, not faceplate, but an entire head that you pop off, pop back on, that gives him a slightly different expression. And there is also a masked head that I think looks really cool. It kind of gives him like a Cobra Commander vibe, because just imagine this with less molded detailing and just a blank faceplate. I'll put up pictures so you can see what I'm talking about, because right now the accessories and everything else for this guy are in a box that's buried deep in my closet, and I just am not gonna take all that out. But the head and the molding is fantastic. The shape of the head is perfect for Megatron. I love how it still gets that point across. And it has a light up gimmick. You just pop the top of the head off, like so. It just pegs in a couple places. And then there's this little switch up here. You flip that, and it lights up his eyes. And now his eyes are lit up, and this is cool, but I also don't like it because the LED, you can see it's like in the center, and it's just one LED. So when you're looking at it from straight on, it kind of looks like he's cross-eyed. And then it just kind of, yeah, I don't like that. I want to paint the eyes, but I don't know if I can. I tried taking the head apart, and you can take the head apart. Like if you pop this off, you can pop the sides out and pop the face off. You can pop the face off, but you can't, like I can't get the translucent plastic out of the faceplate. So if I were to paint it, I'd have to paint it very carefully to make sure not to get that much or any onto the gray plastic around it. But I don't know, I think it'd look better with painted eyes that diffuse the light a little better. Also, unfortunately, the alternate head that I have that is not masked, the LED, I can't get the switch to work. I don't know what's going on. The batteries are in there, it just doesn't work. Also, I gotta say, as cool as this is, I am not a fan of having to disassemble the head to turn the light on. I get having to take the head apart to take the batteries in and out, but to turn the light on, that kind of sucks. Anyway, this will just pop back on here, and there we go. Should we do articulation? Yeah, let's do articulation. I feel like we spent so much time with the transformation, but whatever. So, the head is on a ball joint, but what's cool is the ball joint itself is actually on a hinge, which, actually let's pop this off so you can kind of see, the ball joint itself can move up and down. And that's cool because, you know, when you've got the ball joint attached, you can do the tilting, you can rotate, you can look up and down, but if you wiggle it up and bring it up, you don't have to bring it up that far because that looks weird, but if you bring it up, that gives you way more down, way more up, and not necessarily more side to side, but it gives you a broader range and allows you more kind of dynamic stuff, because when it's in all the way, you don't really get much down. You get a lot better down motion on the head. I really like that. The arms can do a full 360 on a very loud and tight ratchet. I saw in TFW some of the shoulder ratchets were so tight that the joints were kind of breaking. It wasn't like the ratchets themselves, it was just something like you could fix it with some glue, but just something to be aware of. The ones on mine, I got mine from BBTS, and I think they must have gotten like a later run or something because they took a while to get them in, so hopefully I won't have any problems with this, but we'll see. As I said, these flaps can move out of the way to allow you to bring the arms out pretty much 90 degrees. And you also get a bicep rotation, much appreciated. Now, the elbow bend is 90 degrees. It's not the best, but given everything else this figure does, I really don't mind. You've got a wrist swivel and a kind of up and down motion on the hand that seems kind of pointless. It might be for transformation, so you can curl it in just a little bit more, or a lot, but it doesn't go up because of the back plate. Like, there's no room for it to go up any further, so he can't like hold his hand out like that. And then you have a ball joint at the base of the thumb, so it can rotate and go up and down. There's also a hinge that can go up, and then the tip of the thumb can go up, so you've got some decent motion there. I should bring this closer so you can actually see what I'm talking about. The fingers do not spread, but each of the digits do have 1, 2, 3 joints, so you can move it at the base, move it at there, and move it at the tip, so that gives you more range as well, and all 4 of the fingers are like that. The waist does rotate. It's not a ratchet, but it rotates, and it gets the job done. And then weirdly because of the transformation, he has a ab crunch, but this bit actually folds in to get out of the way for the ab crunch, which is pretty cool. So, fold that down and you get a pretty intense ab crunch that does reveal some detail back here, so it doesn't look quite as disconnected. It's still disconnected, but I like that. I think that's cool. And if you just do it a little ways, it's not too bad. Now, the hips, they are limited, but there are ways around it in some instances. Like, there is a thigh rotation, but it's very limited because of what's going on back here. You can kind of see that this bit will just knock into this, and that's all the thigh rotation you're going to get. That I do think is disappointing, but you also get forward, backward, in and out, but it is very hampered by what's going on up here. Like, you can go back pretty much the full 90, but going forward, like, you really can't because of this. And you can only really go out the one click because of all of this going on, which is why you've got that drop-down joint that when you drop it down, that allows you to go out like past 90 degrees. It allows you full 90 degrees forward, which, given how thick this area is, I think that's okay. And then back can go past 90 if you have that drop down. So yeah, that's cool that they added that. I like that. Now, even though the thigh rotation is disappointing, you do still retain that knee rotation, so you can kind of use that to make it look like the leg is turned a little bit more. The knee can bend all the way in. It actually does have multiple joints. It bends here, it bends up here, and it bends up here. So that's really cool how that comes down, and then you can see all this come down and open up as you push it all the way. And now the feet. You don't get any forward and backward motion, but you can move the toes. And if you finagle it a little bit, you can angle the toes up a little bit because of the double joint in there. And what I think is really cool is you actually do get a non-insignificant amount of ankle tilt. The reason I think that's cool is because if you remember how this thing transforms, that is a chunk of the tank tread there. They built a joint into the tank treads because it was sitting inside the foot, so that both the tank tread chunk and the foot can tilt at the same time. That is really smart. I really like that detail. Okay, we're almost done, but I do want to address this. If you notice, the figure is leaning back slightly. It will do this out of the box. It does this pretty much for everyone out of the box for one very specific reason. I've seen some other videos where this was a problem, and it is a problem. Mine was doing it too, but the reason it does this is because it's mistransformed in the box. And if you're not sure what thing to look for, you could have this as a constant problem and not know what's going on. If you cannot get your Mega Tank to stand up straight, you want to come down to the knees here and bend them and push this bit out. Because when you get this out of the box, it's going to look like this. And that is wrong. And because this thing is supposed to be down for tank mode, which will allow it to sit a little bit more flush, but it comes like this, it's pushing up against this piece and not allowing the leg to straighten out. So by making sure that's up where it needs to be, that addresses the leaning problem, and now you stand straight up. So yeah, if your figure does that out of the box, just look at those knees, make sure they're transformed properly. Okay, let's nudge him way back. Oh goodness. Yeah. This is so huge. Let's do some size comparisons to wrap things up. And you can see already these pull Deltatron a little closer here, so they're actually standing next to each other. You can see that he's towering over a Tobot. Well, not towering, but he's taller than a Tobot combiner. And in robot mode, he's similarly huge next to a couple of deluxes. Like, I can't, this thing is massive. Here he is with Netflix Siege Megatron and Cyberverse Deluxe Megatron. Again, huge. Let's take these comparisons a little further. So here he is with Henkei Megatron and Generation Select Galvatron. Also much taller than Make Toys Ride or Despotron. And this is not quite accurate comparison because this is not Unique Toys Dragoon. This is the KO Skybreaker, which is slightly smaller. So I'd say Unique Toys Dragoon would probably come up to about his shoulder. But yeah, that's how those two stack up. Just for the heck of it, with Perfect Effects Mega Doragon. And I think lastly, this will be lastly, yes. Lastly, we have Fans Hobbies Meg Tyranno. And actually, lastly, here he is with the Duck Tank. Okay, bring it in here. I'm just so tired because this thing is so big and heavy. Also, it's warm in here. So, that is Mega Tank, and this figure is incredible. There's just one other thing I forgot to mention, and that is the sword that it comes with. Here's a picture of the sword, and it's cool. It's, from what I understand, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to evoke the look of his G1 Toys sword, which is neat. It's a nice shape, it's nicely detailed, but it's got no place to go in tank mode, and I feel like he's got enough weaponry. So I left the sword in the box. That's why I'm not showing it off here with the other alternate heads. It is an investment, no denying that, but it is worth it in my mind, because what you're getting is huge and chunky and incredibly well detailed and painted. Really nice articulation. I think the only bit of articulation that really suffers on this guy, well, not suffers, but the articulation on this guy that's not up to par is the single jointed 90-degree elbows and the thigh swivels that only go out so far. But like I said, you can compensate using the knee swivels, so it's fine. It works just fine, and I also like that they included that drop-down joint to allow the legs to kick forward a lot better than they would be able to if it wasn't there, because yeah, these legs would not be going anywhere if that drop-down joint wasn't there. But anyway, that is it for Megatank. What do you all think of this monolithic thing? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you everybody for watching, and remember, art is more than meets the eye.